My name is Dani Novak. I am the only child of Zdenka, born Steiner, and Zvonko Matesdorfer. My parents were Jewish. My father was born in Karlovac and my mother in Zagreb. Before World War II, both of my parents were married and both lost their spouses due to the Holocaust. My mother's first husband, Fritz Brichta, her parents Lavoslav and Elsa Steiner, and her only sister Mira were killed in 1941. My father's first wife, Theresa, his parents Teresa and Shandor Matesdorfer, as well as his brothers Joseph, Slavko and Rudo, were also murdered in 1941, probably near Karlovac, Croatia or Jadovno. His sisters Zora and Zlata survived the Holocaust. My parents met in 1945. They married in 1946 and changed their last name to Novak, which means new. In 1948, they emigrated to Israel and I was born a few months later. My first 3 years we lived close to an orange grove that my late grandfather Lavoslav bought for my Mira's 12th birthday, the bat mitzvah. Later we moved to nearby Haifa. I used to play Tarzan, climb orange trees and eat fresh oranges from the trees. I loved swimming in the sea and building sandcastles. My elementary school shared a fence with the Golden Baha'i Temple on Mount Carmel. My childhood until age 14 seemed happy. At the same time, I lived under the shadow of a profound trauma. I believed that for my mother, I was her sister Mira and also her first love and husband Fritz. At age 14, it all exploded and my happy life changed. I started experiencing emotional waves. Fears and depressions were almost unbearable. Thus, I decided to study pure mathematics, as that allowed me to escape to the world of beauty and logic. When I taught at Ithaca College, I designed a course called Mathematical Art with Computers and taught my students how to create beautiful designs. The most beautiful one was called the Spiral of Life. I also taught my students and young children in summer camps how to create labyrinths. In 1971, when I saw Chaya, my soul almost escaped my body. We married and have 2 beautiful daughters. Our younger daughter Edna lives in Auckland, New Zealand, and Meitali in Ithaca, New York. Meitali has 2 beautiful boys. In 1977, we moved from Israel to America to complete a PhD in mathematics. I worked at Ithaca College for many years and lived in Ithaca until the coronavirus arrived, while we visited New Zealand. We are still in New Zealand. My mother died in 2003. I decided then to find out what happened to my family. In the late 80s, my mother wrote a book about her life experiences, but the details were missing. Somewhere in the book, my mother's mentioned the name Jadovno and Pag. These were my first keys. My healing journey lasted between November 2005 until October 2019. Before I share with you some beautiful moments of this journey, I want to summarize in a few slides what I discovered. The next 2 slides give you the facts, but the journey itself will show you the light beyond the physical facts. There is a guiding and loving light that was with me all these years and is still here and with all of us on our individual journeys. In June 1941, prisoners were brought to the collection camp in Gospic. It included my grandfather Lavoslav, grandmother Elsa, Aunt Mira, and my mother's first husband Fritz. Lavoslav stayed in Gospic until Jasenovas was opened, and then was sent there and died. Elsa, Mira, and Fritz were transported to Pag. They died there. My mother died in 2003. Once I felt like I was my mother's first husband who came again in a new body. It took me 14 years to find the answers I was looking for. In November 2005, I obeyed that inner call, a call of pain and love from the past. I boarded a plane from New York to Zagreb, where two of my cousins live. After a few days, and in spite of everyone discouraging me from going, I drove a rented car to Gospic. A young man in Gospic directed me to Jadovno, high in the Velebit mountains. I was looking for a cliff because I read in a history book by Menachem Shelach that people were thrown off a cliff. I was cold and almost gave up, but when I returned to the car, I met three woodcutters. I asked them about a place where people died 65 years ago. They directed me to walk down some stairs. I found these stairs and walked down. When I saw a big hole in front of me, I knew that I found the pit. I screamed out of relief. Then I lit the memorial candle. I believe that this event started a deep healing process for me. I think that this cave was inside me for many years. Later I learned that many people, mostly Serbs and also many Jews, were thrown into this natural cave where they died in the most cruel way possible. Later I found that there are many more caves like this one in that area, but they are completely neglected. From the cave I continued driving through the Velebit mountains range and reached a small fishing village called Karlobag. I have learned that Fritz, my mother's first husband, died there. After Karlobag, I boarded the rented car on a ferry to the island Pag. I arrived at the village of Metaina at about 1:30. I asked for directions how to reach Slana. I was told that the easiest way was by boat, but that there was also a way to get there by foot. I was walking and walking through the rocky desert like a spirit. On the way I saw this single flower that smiled at me. It gave me courage to continue. Finally, after a few hours, I saw a strange stone structure, a stone wall in the middle of nowhere, and a voice inside me told me that it was Slana. It was getting late and I started walking back. I returned to Zagreb hotel at midnight and decided to put the photos on the internet. By a miracle, Nada Ljubic saw the photos. She told Dusan Bastasic, who contacted me. We decided to meet in Zagreb and search together. In May 2006, Dusan, my wife Chaya, and I met in Zagreb and continued our exploration together. We met a man called Juro Zatezalo who lived in Karlovac. Juro did extensive research on what happened in Croatia during the Second World War and also the recent war. He wrote books and documented what was happening. Juro was the kindest and most loving human being. From Karlovac, Dusan, Chaya and I went to Jadovno. It is so sad what men can do to men. For me, forgiveness and love are the only answers. After Jadovno, we headed towards Pag on a beautiful winding mountain road until we reached Karlobag. In Karlobag, we hired a fisherman to take us to Pag. We walked to the place where in 2005 I found that strange stone structure in the middle of nowhere. My intuitive feelings from November 2005 were confirmed. That was Slana. Between 2005 and 2015, I continued to heal slowly. I traveled to different countries and visited Croatia several times. I love Croatia and its culture, and I love Serbia too. I believe that young people from the Balkans can and will join together to heal and bring prosperity and real peace back to this beautiful part of the world. In 2010 and 2011, I witnessed one of the first commemorations that Dusan Bastasic helped to organize. I realized that the same force that moves the stars and that caused me to travel all alone to Jadovno in 2005 is now guiding thousands of other people to transform the pain into new life. I also met Juro Zatezolo and our friendship deepened. Our grandsons Ronan and Kian were born and our younger daughter Edna moved to New Zealand. But there were no big breakthroughs in my investigation of what happened to my family. After my father died in 1992, I visited my mother's almost every year in Israel. I slept in the same room where I used to sleep as a child, and old memories kept coming. One day, when I was walking on Mount Carmel near Haifa University, an inner force pulled me to the top of a mountain. I saw a heart in the stone, same kind of stone that was on Mount Velebit that created the Shara Novayama. It was a sacred pilgrimage for me to visit that stone often, and I did it sometimes during the night when I could not sleep. This stone will always stay in my heart. The heart in the stone is alive in me. Later I found that the most rare and sacred white lilies grow nearby that stone. Big breakthroughs happened in 2015. In June, I continued my journey into the past. My wife Chaya and I visited Croatia again. I wanted to find more details of what happened to my family. On June 15th, around 11 o'clock, Chaya and I met Juro Zatezolo in his apartment in Karlovac. He showed us a book that he wrote about what happened in Pag and Jadovno in 1941. The names of my grandmother Elsa and Aunt Mia were in that book. Without facts that I have learned from Juro Zatezolo, I would not be able to learn what happened to my family and transform my pain. I am a different person now. I have immense gratitude to Dr. Juro Zatezolo. On the same day, Chai and I continued to Metaina. I learned that when women were brought from Zagreb to Pag, they were kept in a certain house in Metaina. I even had an old photo of that house. We left Juro apartment before noon and headed to Metaina. At 6 p.m. on the same day, we found the house. It was not hard to recognize it as it was different from other houses built in more recent years. In 2015, it was a school. Due to a miracle, I was able to enter the house and took some photos. Chaya waited for me inside. That night, we stayed in Zadar, but I could not sleep. Around 4 a.m., I started driving alone to the Sharanova Yama in Jadovno, and all the way it was raining extremely hard. When I arrived, I saw a rainbow. Deep inner peace enveloped me. The Sharanova Yama was not far. When I reached the cave, it was time for the morning Jewish prayer. I prayed with my talit and tefillin for hours. The birds were singing, the sun rays penetrated the forest. I felt that many of the souls of the people who died there were freed. 3 months later, in September 2015, I joined the Israeli movie team that produced the movie The Forgotten Ones about the Jewish Holocaust in Yugoslavia. While in Metaina, the locals tried to prevent us from taking pictures, and there was a lot of commotion and denial, and we had to leave. A few minutes later, a police car stopped us and they took our passports. A few hours later, a higher power intervened. The police apologized, returned the passports, and offered to protect us the next day so we can continue filming. The incident was on Creation TV, and here is a short clip. The resource file has the link to the movie and also the TV interview. On October 2019, I went alone on my last journey to Metaina. I decided to find the grave site where my aunt and grandmother, together with hundreds of other women, children, and men, on August 14, 1941, were slaughtered and massacred. I arrived at Metaina on the evening of October 18th. I started walking around 6:30 a.m. the next morning. I had an intuitive feeling where to go and also the GPS coordinates of the place. But what helped me immensely were red marks on the rocks that later I found came from the Croatian sports team called Life on Mars, where hundreds of people run walk in the desert stone island. Instead of Life on Mars, a better name could be Death on Park, but I am very grateful for the marks. At 9:30 a.m. I arrived at Slana. From there the terrain was more difficult, but before 11 a.m. I found a place where the people were killed. I prayed El Maleh Rachamim, God full of mercy. I purified my body in the sea. I regressed back to my journey to Croatia in 2006. On the way back to the USA, after visiting Jadovno with Dusan, my wife and I passed through Milan. In the afternoon, we walked through a peaceful neighborhood and heard beautiful music from a church. We entered and saw a man who was displaying his artwork in the lobby. His name was Alberto Schiavi. I will never forget this meeting. To me, his pictures looked like images of souls whose bodies died in Jadovno. The paint on the canvas transformed the darkness to light. The souls were also transformed to a higher dimension. It was metamorphosis. When I returned to Ithaca, I met a composer named John Weber, and we became friends. When John saw Alberto's paintings and heard my story, he composed a piece of music called Metamorphosis. For me, music, poetry, and art can transform the pain and agony to love and new life. When I returned to Ithaca, I found the following words in one of my mother's old albums. I realized that I fulfilled her will. Her granddaughter Edna will read it in the next slide.
If, once upon a time, you, my dearest and most beloved Danchek, will have the time, the wish, the courage, and the intention to visit these places, and if it isn't too late, to inquire some of the villagers in Pagslana what happened to the first victims, the Jewish women, children, and young girls who arrived there by first transport from Croatia, Zagreb, at the end of June 1941, do it. Your mother will be greatly indebted to you and full of gratitude, but please never tell me the truth. To me, all of them are angels in heaven. Do you understand why now I love you so much, why I spoiled you and fondled you and regarded you as my leading star in the canopy of the celestial sphere?